Hello to all and welcome back into the channel for a very different type of video. We'll make this brief and to the point. Now, many of us who have watched the show may or may not have come to the right conclusion about why exactly this show exists, just like its fictional counterpart, the TVA. But don't worry, I'm here to help you out with that. Now, we know what's in Marvel's bag, we at least know what they're about. We've seen them operate, and really this is not an indictment. Just like any good franchise, they're always expanding upon their cinematic canon, and if likewise expanding on their cinematic character roster, while threading this tapestry of continuity within their movies. However, the concept or DNA for this particular show is quite simple. What would happen if the self-proclaimed god of mischief came into contact with an organization built on controlling chaos? This concept has likewise been expounded upon, primarily with the help of Agent Mobius. And again, if you've been paying close attention to the extremely well done character development, Agent Mobius has been used in such a brilliant way to help flesh out these traits within Loki that has always held him back. So now Loki has had the opportunity to be honest with himself since he got a glimpse of what his decisions would lead to. So now if you think about it, this is used much in the way that classic storytelling is structured, i.e. the call to adventure, as our hero becomes aware of a larger world and changes accordingly due to the revelation of how he fits into that larger world. Now in my last video I mentioned how Loki was redeemable due to him having the feels when others weren't around, meaning Loki has heart. He was up to this series afraid to show it because he viewed it as a weakness, but now those within the TVA have become to question their roles due to Sylvie dropping a bombshell that all of the employees of the TVA are in fact variants. Now, despite the fact that they're all humans in the 1970 aesthetic, and more on that shortly, one of the first questions, or two questions actually, that I had upon watching the first episode of Loki was, how is this regular guy charged with a violation of the sacred time stream? What could he have possibly done? And two, if Loki is a variant, why use a variant to catch a variant? Wouldn't that lead to more chaos? Well, as it turns out, it seems to be the unwritten rule of the TVA. So given all these facts, if there is yet another Loki responsible for all of this, whether or not it will actually happen, it would make more sense, story-wise. Now back to the point of Marvel's expanding their cinematic characters. Could they possibly introduce, let's say, an Immortus or even Kang the Conqueror? Sure, but would it fit in all the current in-show continuity? Probably not. Now, there are at least 3 reasons why that big reveal won't initially be the case. First, seeing as how this is now the 3rd Marvel show, once you demystify all of the internet hype and theories surrounding these shows, the 2 endings with WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier were fairly predictable in the sense that they followed in-show canon. So now that's the first. Now the second reason is still in-show, that being the Loki variants being the majority of those in the Void, which means Loki always view themselves as a threat, or more so to this point. An undeveloped Loki is a threat to himself, while the Loki who sees the other as a friend, even if they're not per se a Loki, will actually sacrifice themselves for that friend. We've seen this pattern time and time again. Now before we get into our third and final reason, I just want to set this up real quick. The head of the Living Tribunal is seen laying on the ground in the Void, or where all the Lokis are. And for those of you who don't know, in the comics the Living Tribunal was placed as the overseer of the multiverse. So what if another variation of Loki, say a King Loki, came into power and somehow viewed all other variants of himself, hence that particular word, as possible threats to him conquering the time stream, or the original timekeepers? The war was Loki taking over. Following this format, an undeveloped Loki will always view himself as a would-be ruler, especially of humans, which I think would explain the 1970s look. That will also explain why Loki erased Sylvie's timeline when she was just a child. She was too big of a threat. And what we'll see is our Loki rising to the challenge of overcoming himself as a more nuanced character. So then, the main tale of this dynamic is to pay attention to what is said by the Lokis, which always seems to foreshadow what comes next. For example, I think a successful Loki who conquered the TVA is like a boastful Loki, while our main Loki could potentially be the classic Loki, mixed with Sylvie. We'll just have to see, but this is what I reason to be the DNA of the Loki series. Thanks so much for watching, and until then, see you then.